Alright guys, welcome back to another Pokemon TCG Pocket video on my channel. So today I wanted to actually give my first impressions about the Wisdom of Sea and Sky booster pack which is dropping, and as you can see there are already quite some few cards which have been leaked. Now a few of them aren't really like visible as of yet, like we don't really know what kind of effects they are and whatnot. Jinx seems to be an EX card actually from the looks of it, to be honest, but yeah, we never know, right? Wobbuffet and so forth. So yeah, let's talk about a bit about specific cards in this set and actually give a few impressions and thoughts on some of these. So let's start by talking about Ho-Oh EX. Now, this Pokemon, probably one of my all-time favorite Pokemons. I mean, who doesn't like Ho-Oh EX? Or generally Ho-Oh from the games, right? The legendary Pokemon from the Johto region. Now, it is truly the definition of a energy accelerator, right? Attacking for free energies, which are colorless, by the way, doing 80 damage and being able to actually supply Pokemons on your bench with fire, water, and electric type energy at the same time, which is huge, right? I mean, this is a huge ramp up for especially Pokemon like the new Lugia EX, right? Also for like Druddigon, for example, right? Druddigon could finally shine in this deck as not only a wall, but also an attacker, right? Even Dragonite is going to profit hugely from something like Ho-Oh in the active position, right? So that is definitely something which I'm looking forward to. Now, the main thing to consider about it is the high energy cost, right? Free energy to be able to just ramp up another Pokemon is maybe not as easy to pull off, right? So I can assume that Ho-Oh EX might not have the biggest impact of the new set, right? Nevertheless, it's going to have a huge impact. It's definitely going to be a meta-defining card. I'm assuming, at least, right? It's definitely going to be something, especially with cards like Elemental Switch or maybe even Zeraora. Zeraora is going to be able to get energy, and then you can take it with Elemental Switch or Dawn. Right, so there are different kind of strategies, right? Now, the only thing here is, again, it's very slow in its engine. So that's actually something which I'm not really looking forward to, right? It's going to probably require the new baby Magby, for example, or like any baby Pokemons which ramp up energy as well. So that is going to probably be one of those things you may need to take into such a deck. Also, if you're playing Ho-Oh EX, you're probably relying a lot on the play with Ho-Oh EX and Dragonite or Lugia. So you're going to need to run something like Lyra or Leaf to draw back your Pokemon very quick. So yeah. Another thing here is it only has 150 HP. So that basically makes it a one-shot for a Giratina with red, for example. Or it would also make it a one-shot with for a Flareon EX with red, or 2 times the Eevee back, right? So those are some considerations which you may have to make when thinking about this Pokemon. Nevertheless, it's going to make a lot of Pokemon playable now, which is going to be huge. Like Dragonite EX is probably going to profit a lot from this. Even more so than Lugia, I'd say, because Lugia has the same HP. However, Dragonite EX has a lot more HP, right? It has a lot more survivability in comparison to Lugia EX. So we'll see how this one actually falls off. But yeah, I'm not really too fond of it being free energies. But then again, playing something like Darkrai Giratina, both of them also needing 3 or more energy, I think it's actually alright. Now, let's talk about Lugia EX, because we've already spoken about Ho-Oh. Now, Lugia EX is going to be the counterpart of Ho-Oh EX. The attack does 180 damage. I mean, that is a... Bro, you're looking to one-shot anything in the game, like literally, apart from obviously Venusaur with maybe Leaf Cape or something like that, right? But nevertheless, this Pokemon is huge in terms of damage. The only trade-off here is it requires one of each energy types, right? which is very hard to pull off without the aforementioned Ho-Oh EX, right? Like that is one thing. Even dragon types currently in the deck don't need that. Even like Ultra Necrozma doesn't need free energy types in order to attack, right? Which is, yeah, something like that. And the problem also with it is, while also being able to deal that kind of damage, it has to discard its energy to turn off. Then now you can actually play it with Ho-Oh EX again, using Lyra, bring it back and forth, and so forth, right? That's definitely something that may work well, but when the opponent, for example, has Cyrus or so forth, then you're maybe stuck with your Pokemon in the active position. So yeah, that's going to be something which has to be thoroughly tested, right? I mean, the damage itself, obviously, it's always gonna collect points. It's definitely always gonna get rid of your opponent's boss Pokemon, like no doubt about that. But yeah, they had to probably make the trade-off such, right? A basic Pokemon with 180 damage, they had to give like huge trade-offs here and then. I do assume that if we get V-Star Pokemon and so forth, then this Lugia will be the basic one, and then obviously we will get Lugia V-Star in the future, because the base version of Lugia EX, or the base version of Lugia EX in the Pokemon TCG, right, isn't good as well. However, Lugia V-Star, on the other hand, is broken, right? So there may be something we're looking forward to in terms of that. But yeah, that is just like a few thoughts about Lugia X. Now, you could be playing decks like, for example, double Ho-Oh, double Lugia, and maybe double Pichu, for example, for the extra energy ramp, or double Magby, for example, right? Those are like some deck ideas which you have, and then maybe Elemental Switch or even Dawn, like so. You could even think about running Lugia EX with Magby and Manaphy, actually. That's also a crazy idea. And maybe Zeraora, but yeah, those are like just thoughts at the moment, right? But anyways, that's it for Lugia EX. Now, the probably best Pokemon in terms of impact with the meta in this current set will most likely be Umbreon EX. Now, Umbreon EX is something to get hyped over. Now, not only because it's Umbreon EX, I mean, I always liked Umbreon EX, and it's an evolution Pokemon, so it evolves from Eevee, right? And you're able to play it with an Eevee focus deck, for example, right? Umbreon EX is definitely something with a very cheesy ability. It basically has a Cyrus built in. So if the opponent has a damaged Pokemon on his bench, you're then able to bring that Pokemon forth to the active position once a turn, right? Using Umbreon EX. Now, the only trade-off you really have is you must have Umbreon EX in the active position. However, Umbreon EX has a good damage too. 2 energies does 80 damage. That is a better Darkrai. In a sense, it doesn't need free energy like Darkrai does, right? It does have 2 retreat cost. However, this Pokemon, I do think, is going to make a big impact. Like the same way Sylveon EX made, right? I am assuming this Pokemon will make a huge impact, right, on the current or the next upcoming meta, right? You can play it with different type of deck combinations, right? I'm thinking something Umbreon EX, Sylveon EX, and Greninja, right? That's a deck right there. You're playing it with Dark type and Water Energy, or only Dark type. You're focusing only on bringing Umbreon EX forth. That is going to be a big deck, right? For example, I do think that is going to be meta in the current season. Or you may even play it with you're playing a Umbreon EX ×2, Sylveon EX ×2, and Darkrai ×2, right? So you're running 4 EVs, 4 evolutions, obviously, and 2 Darkrai's. And that deck is going to be also broken. Like, these 2 decks probably are going to make top #1 spot in the current or the upcoming season. I'm pretty sure of it, right? If you're just thinking about it. Because the ability of Umbreon is just so cheesy. Like, it is so broken. I mean, Cyrus itself is disgusting. Like, how many matches are won and lost just because a Cyrus comes in the right time for a player, which is definitely something this Umbreon provides, right? You can also play like different decks, for example, running like a pure evolutions deck with Umbreon EX would also be possible. So there are different possibilities. And this one, again, if I was to give this right now a rating, I would place it top tier A++. Without a doubt. Umbreon EX probably going to be very busted. Now, on the other hand, we do have Espeon EX. Now, while Espeon EX may not have the same impact as, for example, Umbreon EX, I do think still it has its use cases, right? So Espeon EX is also, again, an evolution Pokemon. So it evolves from Eevee, 140 HP, 80 damage. Isn't too bad, right? For 2 energy, which is actually good. Now, the only thing here is it has an ability, which is healing. It is able to heal once a turn 1 Pokemon for 30. Which isn't too bad. However, it needs to be in the active position for that. If it was to have just this ability without being in the active spot, then that would be huge. But it needs to be in the active position, which is somewhat, not too good in my opinion in comparison to like other Pokemon, like for example, Wigglytuff, right? But yeah, you could actually think about running this Pokemon still as a side piece, right? When, for example, running Sylveon EX with Giratina and Greninja, for example, you could run an Espeon in there just for the sake of it, right? That's definitely one option you have, right? Now the main problem here is with Espeon EX, again, it needs to be in the active position, right? And even though it has the same healing amount as, for example, Pokemon Center Lady, there is a trade-off. It doesn't heal status ailments as one. And on the other hand, I mean, Pokemon Center Lady is in general not as good as, for example, the use of a Cyrus or a Professor's Research. So Umbreon EX or Sylveon EX are still definitely the better Pokemon to play. But nevertheless, again, I do think it's going to get useful in some cases, but in general, I would rather say this is one of the worst EX Pokemon currently. Alright, next up we have 2 baby Pokemon, which are probably the best thing to come to Pokémon TCG Pocket. We have one Pichu, and then we have Magby. And both of them have the ability to take a energy. Magby can take fire and give it to one of your benched basic Pokemon, and Pichu to one of your benched basic Pokemon and electric energy. Now this is huge. Now the big thing about these two is they bring a totally new mechanic to the game, which is the fact that they do not need an energy to attack, which basically means you can, if you're starting first and you have one of them on your hand, you can use in turn 1, which is just broken, right? This is something I was always loving in the Pokemon TCG, right? I'm also playing the Pokemon TCG Live, and this is huge. It's going to be a Pokemon which can be run in any deck in the future going forward, right? This is basically a game changer for a lot of decks. And again, even the Ho-Oh and Lugia deck is going to profit hugely from this, right? If you're going first. And these Pokemon, right, these ones actually make going first, again, a good thing. It's not too bad to go first now if you run with these in your deck, right? Depending on whether you need it or not, right? But that is definitely something. And again, the biggest thing here, it costs 0, so you don't need to waste an energy on them as well to be able to do their do their thing or to activate their ability or attack, which is something good. And now they are kind of a sacrificial lamb because both of them only have 30 HP. So in most cases, you're probably only going to use them once and then they will die. Now that is something you can actually look over because you can actually use these Pokemon in turn 1, right? And for example, if you're running these Pokemon in turn 1, for example, you're having a big advantage over your energy if you're playing this in turn 1. Now, Pichu especially is going to benefit a lot for Dragonite EX. Now, with Magby, I'm not going to lie to you, I'm actually seeing a potential return of the Gen 1, from the first genetic Apex set, Charizard. Oh, I'm not going to lie, I am seeing actually a return of that Charizard. It needs 4 energy, it will discard 2 energy. However, it has the highest damage in the entire game, still, as of today. So I'm actually curious on whether this will work or not, right? But yeah, that is definitely something. Or you could even think about playing Zapdos EX even better now with Pichu, for example, right? Giving Zapdos EX the energy. That is also something you could be playing, right? Or even giving Oricorio, like for example, an extra energy earlier, right? Which would make it ready turn 2 actually. Those are like options. You have so many options with these. Definitely one of my most wanted cards, like these baby Pokemon. I'm assuming, right, we're gonna probably get Azurill as well to complete the trio. So we have Pichu for electric energy, we have Magby for fire energy, and we may get an Azurill for water energy. I don't know, we'll see. But yeah, that would definitely be something I'm looking forward to. Now, another baby Pokemon, which I think is very good, is going to be Cleffa. Now, Cleffa is good because it allows you to bring a random Pokemon from your deck into your hand. And I do see there is a typo there, right? Yo. Doesn't matter, it happens. I just wanted to say. So the thing here is, I do still think Pichu and Magby are better supports in my opinion. Because Cleffa is, I don't know, not really worth the spot. I do think it's very good, right? But the thing is, it also has only 30 HP. It's able to bring a random Pokemon. Maybe it may be a Pokemon which you do not really need at the beginning at all. So you may be wasting a turn, right? Or a point, rather to speak, right? So that's something, yeah, I don't know. I do think it's not something that's going to be that broken, but we'll see as it comes, right? Now, we do have Pokemon which work specific, right? We do have Shinotic, which works specifically well with Solgaleo EX, for example. We do have already Sylveon EX, which draws 2 cards. And I do think Cleffa falls in a kind of same category, right? But it's not as versatile as the other 2 mentioned. So yeah, I do think Cleffa is going to be one of the lesser seen Pokemon. But yeah, definitely one of those other baby Pokemon, which is nice to have. All right, next up, Shiny Gyarados. Now, the Lake Rage Gyarados gets finally a card, right? That is something very hyped about, right? 20 damage for 2 energy is actually not good, obviously, but the ability is actually pretty good. You're able to allow to discard water Pokemon, which are benched on your side of the field, right? And then doing 40 damage for each benched Pokemon you discarded this way. So you're able to do, if you have 3 water type Pokemon on your bench, able to do a total of 140 damage. For 2 energy, that is huge. Now running something like, for example, what's it called? Eldest of Elises, for example, or the Fisher Net, right? You're then able to pick up your Pokemon again, throw them on your bench, and then do the same thing again, right? And with 130 HP, Gyarados is not an easy pushover. Now, I do think this Pokemon is going to be making a bigger impact in non-EX environments, right? Definitely one of those things I will see mostly there. I do think Wishy-Washy is somehow the best partner and somehow not, right? Now, Wishy-Washy is able to draw out its own copy, and then you have Wishy-Washy EX, which could also benefit from each other. But yeah, I don't know if those are possibly the best pairs. I do think the Pyukmuku, for example, or even Manaphy may be one of those partners which could be ideally paired with Gyarados, right? But we'll see how this one actually works in the future. Again, I do think Elemental Switch and maybe Rescue Scarf and Lyra are some cards you will also need in this deck. But yeah, there is, again, so much room for building decks with this Pokemon. All right, next up, let's talk about the trainer cards. Lyra, Silver, Rescue Scarf, and Elemental Switch. Now, let's begin with Lyra. Lyra is probably the card I'm most excited about, right? Specifically due to the fact that you're able to switch your active Pokemon, right? Now, the thing is, Lyra is much more than only a leaf. Like, leaf is able to retreat your Pokemon and so forth, right? However, you do not need to retreat. Now, the thing with Lyra is she's much more. She's able to essentially reset status ailments, for example, because you're able to switch your Pokemon back with another Pokemon. So it is essentially bringing the same mechanic as Celesteela, for example, from the Ultra Beasts deck, right? Because Celesteela is allowing you to switch out your Pokemon regardless of what you... So even if your opponent attacks with like a Pokemon which prevents your Pokemon from switching out, Lyra will override this, right? And that is something I'm looking forward to. And I do think a lot of decks are going to profit from this. Aforementioned the Ho-Oh Lugia, obviously they are going to profit from this as well. But yeah, that's the Lyra. Now let's jump over to Silver. Now Silver is actually yeah, I always actually liked Silver in the games, right? It's actually a decent hand revealing card, right? Silver basically allows you to choose a supporter card from your hand, shuffle it into your opponent's deck, and that's it. By the way, you're able to see his entire hand. So it is basically able to reveal the opponent's hands, which is good because maybe it reveals cards which allows you as a player to adjust your playstyle depending on what the opponent has in its hand, right? That is definitely something I'm looking forward to as well. I do think Silver is definitely a Pokemon which can be used, especially in a lot of disruptive kind of decks, right? But yeah, let's jump over to the Rescue Scarf. Now, Rescue Scarf is the first Pokemon tool of the new set. Or the only tool to be revealed anyways. Rescue Scarf is actually a pretty good solution. Now, it basically allows you, if the Pokemon this card is attached to is knocked out by damage from an attack from your opponent's Pokemon, you're allowed to put it in your hand instead of a discard pile. Now, this is huge. This is huge. Now, the question here I'm asking is it only bringing that Pokemon back, or if it's like an evolved version brings back also the pre-evolution stages? That's something I don't know yet, but we'll see when the card actually drops out. Now, I do think Rescue Scarf is something which allows the play of 18 trainer cards even more, right? That is definitely something I think where Rescue Scarf will be best, right? Like a solo Articuno deck, for example, or solo whatever deck, right? There, you will see Rescue Scarf a lot more in action as in other decks, right? Now, let's jump on to the last item card which has been revealed, which is Elemental Switch. Now, Elemental Switch is huge. It is a item card and not like Dawn, a supporter card, which usage is limited to 1 turn, right? Now, this is huge. You're able to move a fire, water, or electric energy from one of your benched Pokemon to your active Pokemon, right? This support piece is like a new power creep, something along the lines, right? You're able to supply Pokemon even faster with energy, not having to waste the use of a supporter card during a turn. If you're running, for example, Zeraora, you're able to use the energy from Zeraora, give it to your active Pokemon, and so forth. Actually, very good card, to be honest, right? And I do think this card is going to find its place, especially like in a few decks like the Dragonite EX, Ho-Oh, for example, or Ho-Oh Lugia, for example, or even Oricorio, Zeraora, and Magnezone decks like that, right? Those are decks where I can see Elemental Switch being huge. All right, last but not least, let's talk about the Porygons. Now, we do have Porygon 2 and Porygon Z in the new set, right? Now, Porygon 2 or Porygon generally is one of the most original evolution line in Pokemon, right? It's got a basic stage in Generation 1, an evolution Generation 2, and another one in Generation 4, right? Pokemon, this Pokemon has been around since ages, right? Porygon 2 has been for years like the apex of evolution line, and it was relevant by itself in the VGC, like the competitive Pokemon video game, right? Even to these days, thanks to Eviolite being a more frequent occurrence than Porygon Z itself, right? Even Porygon Z, even though it's the final stage, Porygon 2 is still the more occurrent Pokemon, right? Now that's that. I do think Porygon 2 is going to be huge because it allows you to, whenever you attach an energy to this Pokemon, you're then able to put a random card from your deck that evolves from this Pokemon essentially and evolve it. So you're able to bring forth your Porygon Z very quickly, right? And Porygon Z is, on the other hand, I don't know, without its ability, it's not too good, right? 2 energy, 70 damage, 130 HP. I mean, yeah, not really. But the ability is good because it's basically doing what a Stoutland is doing, right? It has 1 lesser retreat cost than Stoutland. Stoutland has 2, Porygon Z has 1, which allows you to retreat Porygon Z even faster. You're able to attack. Your opponent cannot attack without having an extra energy wasting on him. If he does, then he can attack. So yeah, that is definitely something. I do think Porygon Z and Porygon are going to be a good setup. I do think they are going to be played very often, especially in non-EX environments. But yeah, we'll see. I do think this one is actually good. And with these 2 Pokemon, let's wrap up the video. There is a lot more cards to talk about, but I do not want to actually talk about every single one. There are a few cards which haven't been revealed, a few cards which have been revealed, which aren't really confirmed as of yet, whether they're fake or not. So yeah, we'll see what else we can actually build and what more Pokemon we'll get from the new set. But yeah, as always, drop a comment down below. Let me know what you think about the new set. And as always, thanks for tuning in. Take care of yourselves. Until next time.